children! Let's see what the Simpsons decided to parody in their comics for the annual material that most people still watch regardless of anything else. The Treehouse of Horror. Starting with It Happens. We cut back to Homer's childhood at a fair, along with his friends Barney, Lenny, Carl, and Marge. What's that? That does not fit with the continuity? Well, whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it. They are branded as a pack of losers by their teachers. A club of losers, if you will, since they're off the clock and don't have to be nice to their students during this time. Barney decides to walk off and get himself a root beer float. But while walking home, he trips, and said root beer float falls into a sewer line, where a very helpful and pointy-teethed Krusty is waiting. Barney asks for his root beer float, but as Krusty points out, everything's afloat down there. Homer spots Krusty eating Barney and tells his friends about it, including Skinner, who decided to join in because there's an opening in the group. Marge draws the clown based on his description, and the art comes to life to try to eat them. Though fortunately, Homer is able to rip up the drawing. Soon, other members of the group are haunted by their imaginative fears. Marge chased by a cigarette to get her to smoke like her sisters. Skinner by a giant version of his mom's foot that demands it be rubbed. Homer by what he'll look like in the future. And poor Lenny and Carl, a TV saying Alf is cancelled. Doing research, they learn that the Krusty Monster feeds on children and their greatest fears, which can be brought to life. Eventually, Homer comes up with an idea to fight off the clown, though not before it eats Skinner. Use their imaginations to summon up things to fight Krusty. Pink Smurfs, Mayor McCheese, and finally Knight Rider to run him over. 30 years later, Krusty returns for revenge on them, but he finds a less than receptive audience. Homer, Lenny, and Carl don't care if Krusty kills them because they work for Mr. Burns and it'd be doing them a favor. Marge's worst fear is not any worse than someone leaving a pack of gum in their pants while doing laundry. And when he tries to go after Bart and Lisa, they don't have any imagination to be afraid. TV and the internet get the job done for them. Krusty decides to just attack as many people as he can at a dedication ceremony for a new Lard Lad Donuts, appearing as a giant spider. But as Comic Book Guy points out, nobody's really scared of giant spiders after Wild Wild West. Unfortunately, Hans Moleman, operating a crane, drops the giant Lard Lad statue on the spider, killing it and ending the menace. So this version of Pennywise would go, waha, waha, waha. Ugh. Next up is A Fungus Among Us, wherein a meteor crashes into the Simpsons' living room. The fungus inside the meteor attaches itself to Homer, growing on his head in a way similar to Marge's hair. It spreads out more fungus to the children and other townspeople, not noticing that Marge is not one of them. Homer, as the king fungus, explains to his fellows that their race of mushrooms were very much living things that ate plants and meat, but other life forms kept harvesting them for medicine, food, and poison. Now they plan to devour living beings on Earth as revenge. Marge calls Professor Frink for help, but suggests tea tree oil, but she lacks it, figuring olive oil might work because it comes from trees, but it just makes the fungus smell delicious. As such, she eats some and is soon infected. Still, she doesn't really mind. After all, things could be worse. She's surrounded by family, friends, beautiful things, and she'll never be hungry again. And finally we have Curse of the Cat Lady. Comic Book Guy, driving around on his Segway, accidentally runs over the tail of a cat belonging to a crazy cat lady. Angry, she puts a curse on him, pointing at Comic Book Guy and yelling, "Feline!" So the Comic Book Guy begins transforming into a cat, knocking over his own stuff on a countertop, growing fur, batting at things, and really he comes across as no different to anyone else, still surly, though more flexible. However, the curse finally really comes into effect when he tries to read a comic book, and can't because he lacks opposable thumbs to turn the page. Oh no, my children! Can you think of anything more horrifying than to never be able to read comics again? This is why we still look to the Treehouse of Horror, because it may be comedy, but it knows what's truly frightening.